Clara Henderson glanced over her shoulder as she placed the small plastic bowl on the edge of the alleyway behind Riverside Cafe, where she had worked as a waitress for the past 3 years. The evening air carried a distinct autumn chill, typical for October in Boston. She shivered slightly, pulling her worn denim jacket tighter around her slender frame as she carefully emptied a pouch of cat food into the bowl. This had become her ritual for the past 2 weeks, ever since she first spotted the skinny grey tabby huddled against the dumpster, eyes wide with fear and hunger. "Come on, little one," she whispered, taking a few steps back and crouching down. "It's just me again." At 25, Clara's life had settled into a predictable routine. Morning shifts at the cafe, evening classes at the community college where she studied nursing, and nights helping her grandmother, Elaine, who had raised her after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12. Money was always tight, but they managed. Clara had learned to find joy in small things, like the gradual trust she was building with this stray cat. After a few minutes, the tabby emerged cautiously from behind a stack of empty produce crates. Clara remained perfectly still as the cat approached the food, its movements deliberate and wary. Though still skittish, the cat had grown slightly more comfortable with her presence over the days. Tonight, it even glanced up at her briefly before lowering its head to eat. "That's it," Clara murmured. "You're safe here." As the cat ate, Clara noticed a fresh cut above its right eye, likely from a fight with another stray. "Poor thing," she sighed. "Life's tough out here, isn't it?" 20 minutes later, Clara walked the familiar route to her grandmother's modest apartment in Dorchester. The neighborhood wasn't the safest, but everyone knew Elaine Henderson, a former schoolteacher who had lived in the same building for over 30 years. Clara's phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Zoe. "Still coming to my birthday thing tomorrow? The Anderson mansion is insane. I can't believe they hired our catering company." Clara smiled. Zoe worked for an upscale catering business and had convinced her boss to let Clara help serve at a high-profile party, offering her a chance to make some extra money. The event was being held at the notorious Anderson estate, home to Victor Anderson, one of Boston's wealthiest real estate developers. "Wouldn't miss it," Clara replied. "Save me something fancy to try." Across town, in the pristine luxury of Beacon Hill, Samuel Anderson slouched in a leather chair in his father's study, barely listening as Victor lectured him about responsibility. "This is the 3rd time this month you've missed a board meeting, Sam," Victor said, his voice tightly controlled. At 62, Victor Anderson had built his empire through ruthless determination and expected his only son to follow in his footsteps. "You're 30 years old. It's time you started taking your position in this company seriously." Samuel ran a hand through his dark hair, fighting the urge to roll his eyes. "Dad, I was at the charity gala you wanted me to attend. I can't be in 2 places at once." "The gala ended at 11. You were photographed at Vapor nightclub at 3 in the morning with that model. What's her name?" "Natasha," Samuel supplied, checking his watch. He was already late for drinks with friends at his favorite downtown bar. "And she's not just a model, she's also an environmental activist," Victor scoffed. "Is that what they're calling it these days?" He placed both hands on his desk, leaning forward. "I've worked too hard building this company to watch you throw it all away on parties and meaningless relationships." The words stung, more than Samuel cared to admit. Despite his carefree facade, he craved his father's approval. But Victor had grown increasingly distant since Samuel's mother died from cancer 5 years ago, burying himself in work and pushing his son to do the same. "We're hosting the governor tomorrow night," Victor continued. "I expect you to be there, sober and engaged. Your future depends on these connections." "Fine," Samuel muttered, standing up. "I'll be the perfect son tomorrow. Can I go now?" Victor waved him away, already turning his attention back to the documents on his desk. As Samuel drove his sleek Tesla through the city streets, his phone rang through the car's speakers. It was his childhood friend, Marcus. "Hey, man, we've been waiting for an hour. You coming or what?" "Sorry, got held up with my father," Samuel replied, accelerating through a yellow light. The usual lecture about responsibility and legacy. Marcus chuckled. "Well, hurry up. Jason brought his cousin from California. She's gorgeous and totally your type." Samuel forced a laugh, though the thought of another meaningless flirtation held little appeal tonight. Lately, he'd been feeling increasingly hollow, as if something essential was missing from his life. The parties, the women, the luxury, it all seemed like a carefully constructed distraction from a truth he couldn't quite name. "I'll be there in 10, he promised, pressing harder on the accelerator. Meanwhile, Clara had arrived home to find her grandmother sitting at the kitchen table, medical bills spread out before her. Elaine quickly gathered them up, offering Clara a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "How was work, dear?" she asked, tucking the papers into a folder. Clara pretended not to notice. "The usual. Mrs. Patterson left me an extra large tip, though." She placed a $20 bill on the table. "For your medication." Elaine began to protest, but Clara cut her off with a gentle hug. "No arguments. I'm making good money tomorrow at that fancy party anyway." Later that night, as Clara lay in bed, she thought about the stray cat and its wounded eye. She made a mental note to bring some antibiotic ointment tomorrow. It was a small thing, caring for a stray animal, but it gave her purpose beyond her daily struggles. Across the city, Samuel ordered another drink, laughing at a joke he hadn't really heard. Surrounded by people who knew only the version of himself he allowed them to see. Neither he nor Clara could have possibly imagined how their separate worlds would collide, or how a simple act of kindness toward a stray cat would change both their lives forever. The Anderson mansion gleamed like a beacon on the hill, its windows ablaze with light, as Boston's elite arrived in a parade of luxury vehicles. Clara stood nervously in the kitchen, adjusting the black bow tie of her server's uniform, while Zoe gave her a crash course in high society etiquette. "Remember, never make eye contact for too long. Don't initiate conversation unless they speak to you first. And whatever happens, don't spill anything on anyone wearing jewelry that costs more than your college tuition," Zoe instructed, loading champagne flutes onto a silver tray. "This is so far from my world," Clara murmured, gazing through the kitchen doorway at the opulent ballroom where crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over marble floors and gilded fixtures. "That's why it's fun," Zoe grinned. "One night to peek behind the curtain of how the other half lives. Now take this tray and smile like you belong here." Clara took a deep breath and stepped into the ballroom, carefully balancing the tray of champagne. As she weaved through clusters of expensively dressed guests, snippets of conversation floated around her. Stock portfolios, vacation homes in the Hamptons, private school admissions. It was like visiting a foreign country where she didn't speak the language. "Champagne, sir," she offered to a silver-haired man in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. "Thank you, my dear," he replied, barely glancing at her as he took a glass. "As I was saying, Victor, the zoning commission is practically in your pocket after that generous donation to the mayor's campaign." Clara's ears perked up at the mention of Victor Anderson, recognizing the name of her host. The man he was speaking to must be the infamous real estate mogul himself, tall, imposing, with sharp features and calculating eyes that seemed to evaluate everything in terms of profit and loss. "Politics is simply another form of business, Charles," Victor replied smoothly. "Investments must yield returns." Clara moved on quickly, not wanting to be caught eavesdropping. For the next hour, she circulated through the party, refilling glasses and collecting empty plates. She was heading back to the kitchen when a loud, slightly slurred voice caught her attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, The prodigal son has arrived. All heads turned toward the grand entrance where Samuel Anderson stood, impeccably dressed, but with a reckless glint in his eye that suggested he'd started celebrating long before the party. Clara recognized him immediately from magazine covers and society pages, the notorious playboy heir to the Anderson fortune. Victor Anderson's expression hardened as he crossed the room to his son. "You're late," he said quietly, though Clara was close enough to overhear, "and you've been drinking." Samuel shrugged, flashing a charming smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm here, aren't I? Besides, what's a party without a little pre-gaming?" Victor gripped his son's arm. "Pull yourself together. The governor will be here any minute." As Victor steered Samuel toward a group of important-looking guests, Clara retreated to the kitchen. When she emerged again with a fresh tray of hors d'oeuvres, the party was in full swing. A string quartet played in the corner while waitstaff glided effortlessly through the crowd. "Hungry?" Clara asked, offering her tray to a young woman dripping in diamonds. "Oh, I couldn't possibly. Carbs are the enemy," the woman laughed, though she took a tiny canapé anyway. From across the room, Clara caught sight of Samuel Anderson, now charming a group of admiring women. Despite his reputation, she couldn't help noticing something in his expression, a flicker of emptiness behind the practiced smile, a disconnection from the revelry around him. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Clara quickly looked away, feeling oddly exposed. By midnight, Clara's feet ached in the stiff black shoes Zoe had lent her. As the party began to wind down, she slipped outside for a moment of quiet, making her way to a stone terrace that overlooked the manicured gardens. The October air felt refreshing after hours in the stuffy ballroom. "Escaping too!" Clara jumped at the voice behind her. Samuel Anderson leaned against a marble column, his bow tie undone, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand. I was just getting some air," she stammered. "I should get back to work." "Please don't," Samuel said, his voice softer than she expected. "I'm hiding from Senator What's-His-Name and his daughter, who my father is determined to pair me with." Despite herself, Clara smiled. "Matchmaking at a charity gala seems efficient." Samuel laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. "My father believes in maximizing every business opportunity, even his son's love life." He studied her curiously. "You don't work for the catering company regularly, do you? I know most of their staff." "Just helping out my friend tonight," Clara admitted. "I'm actually a waitress at Riverside Cafe and a nursing student." Something like interest flickered in Samuel's eyes. "Nursing? That's real. You're actually helping people." Before Clara could respond, the terrace door opened and Victor Anderson stepped out. "There you are, Samuel. The governor is asking for you." His gaze settled coldly on Clara. "I believe the kitchen staff needs assistance inside." Clara's cheeks burned as she hurried past them, mortified at being caught chatting with the boss's son. For the rest of the evening, she kept her head down, avoiding the area where Samuel stood dutifully beside his father, smiling for photographs with the governor. As the party finally ended and the last guests departed, Clara helped Zoe load equipment into the catering van. "So," Zoe nudged her playfully, "I saw you talking to Samuel Anderson on the terrace." "Spill." "It was nothing," Clara insisted, though she couldn't explain the strange connection she'd felt. Not attraction exactly, but a glimpse of something authentic beneath his privileged exterior. "Just a moment of human contact in a room full of wealth robots." Zoe laughed. "Well, your moment earned you a $100 tip. The boss said Mr. Anderson specifically requested it go to you." Clara blinked in surprise. "That's unexpected." And by the time she finished helping with cleanup, it was nearly 3 a.m. Clara was exhausted, but remembered her promise to check on the stray cat. She had tucked a small tube of antibiotic ointment and some premium cat food into her bag before leaving for work. The streets were quiet as she made her way to the alleyway behind Riverside Cafe. To her surprise, The grey tabby was waiting by the usual feeding spot, as if it somehow knew she would come. This time, when she set down the food, the cat approached without hesitation, even allowing her to gently dab ointment on the cut above its eye. "You're getting braver, aren't you?" Clara whispered, watching the cat eat. "I think I'll call you Grey. Not very original, but it suits you." As she stood to leave, Clara noticed a black Tesla parked across the street, engine running. Something about it seemed familiar, but she was too tired to think clearly. All she wanted now was to collapse into bed and forget about the world of the Andersons and their glittering, empty party, a world where she would always be an outsider looking in. What Clara didn't know was that Samuel Anderson sat behind the wheel of that Tesla, watching her gentle interaction with the stray cat with growing fascination. After leaving the party, he had found himself driving aimlessly through the city, haunted by his brief conversation with the waitress whose name he hadn't even asked. There had been something refreshingly genuine about her that made the rest of his night feel like a charade. When he spotted her walking alone at this late hour, concern had prompted him to follow at a distance, making sure she was safe. The last thing he expected was to witness this quiet act of compassion for a stray animal in a dark alleyway at 3 a.m. after a grueling night of work. As Clara disappeared around the corner, Samuel sat in his car, experiencing an unfamiliar feeling. Something like shame mingled with curiosity. In the span of one evening, this stranger had inadvertently held a mirror to his own hollow existence, and he wasn't sure he liked what he saw reflected there. The morning after the party, Samuel woke with a pounding headache and an unexpected sense of purpose. The image of Clara tending to the stray cat had stayed with him through a restless night. There had been something compelling about her quiet generosity, a quality so foreign to his usual social circle that he couldn't stop thinking about it. After a strong coffee and 2 aspirin, he made a decision. He would find her again, though he wasn't entirely sure why. Perhaps to apologize for his father's rudeness, or maybe just to understand what drove someone to care so deeply about a creature most people would ignore. Meanwhile, Clara dragged herself through her morning shift at Riverside Cafe, exhausted from the late night, but pleased with the extra money in her pocket. During her break, she called the local veterinary clinic. "I have a stray cat that's starting to trust me," she explained to the receptionist. "It has a cut that looks infected. Is there any way I could bring it in without traumatizing it completely? We have a trap-neuter return program," the receptionist suggested. "I can lend you a humane trap. Once you bring the cat in, Dr. Rivera can treat the wound and check for other issues." Clara agreed to pick up the trap after work. As she ended the call, she noticed a sleek black Tesla pull up outside the cafe. Her heart skipped a beat when she recognized Samuel Anderson stepping out, looking surprisingly normal in jeans and a cashmere sweater. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered under her breath as he entered the cafe, scanning the room until his eyes landed on her. "Clara, right?" he asked, approaching her table. "Your friend Zoe told me where you work." Clara raised an eyebrow. "You tracked me down? That's not creepy at all." Samuel had the grace to look embarrassed. "I wanted to apologize for my father last night. He can be abrupt." "No apology necessary," Clara replied, gathering her things. "I'm used to being invisible to people like your father. My break's over." She moved behind the counter, hoping he would leave, but Samuel settled onto a stool directly in front of her. "Coffee, please," he said. "And maybe a chance to convince you I'm not just a spoiled rich kid." Clara sighed as she poured his coffee. "Look, I appreciate the tip from last night, but we live in different worlds. You don't need to ease your conscience by being nice to the help." Samuel's confident expression faltered. "That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" Clara challenged. Before Samuel could answer, the cafe door opened and an elderly woman entered, moving carefully with the aid of a cane. "Grandma!" Clara exclaimed, hurrying around the counter. "What are you doing here?" You should be resting." Elaine Henderson smiled warmly. "I had a doctor's appointment and thought I'd surprise you. Plus, I was craving Marie's apple pie." Clara helped her grandmother to a table, acutely aware of Samuel watching them. To her surprise, he stood and pulled out a chair for Elaine. "Thank you, young man," Elaine said, studying him curiously. "Grandma, this is a customer," Clara said awkwardly. "Samuel Anderson," he supplied, extending his hand to Elaine. "It's a pleasure to meet you, ma'am." Recognition flickered in Elaine's eyes, but she simply smiled. "Any friend of Clara's is welcome at our table. Will you join us?" Before Clara could object, Samuel sat down, and soon the three were sharing apple pie, while Elaine regaled him with stories of her teaching days. To Clara's astonishment, Samuel seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions and laughing at her grandmother's witty observations. "Clara tells me you're in real estate," Elaine said eventually. "Your family's company built that new medical center, didn't they?" A shadow crossed Samuel's face. "My father's company, yes. I'm technically the vice president, but mostly I just attend meetings and smile for photographs." "That can't be all you do," Elaine pressed gently. Samuel hesitated. "I studied architecture, actually. I had ideas about sustainable urban development, affordable housing designs. My father had different priorities." Clara glanced up in surprise. This was a side of Samuel Anderson that never made it into the tabloids. After Elaine excused herself to use the restroom, an awkward silence fell between them. "Your grandmother is remarkable," Samuel said finally. "You're lucky to have her." Clara nodded. "She raised me after my parents died, worked 2 jobs to put food on the table, and still found time to help me with homework every night." She studied him curiously. "You really studied architecture?" "Top of my class at MIT, he admitted. "Not that anyone would know it. The party boy heir narrative makes better headlines." For the first time, Clara saw the vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. Before she could respond, her manager called her back to work. "I should go," Samuel said, standing. "But I meant what I said. I'd like a chance to know you better, Clara." Clara hesitated. "I'm picking up a humane trap from the vet clinic after work." "For the stray cat," she added, watching his reaction carefully. "If you really want to do something useful, you could help me set it up." Samuel looked startled, then intrigued. "I'll be here at 6. To Clara's surprise, Samuel was waiting outside when her shift ended, and he drove her to the veterinary clinic in his Tesla. As they set up the trap in the alleyway behind the cafe, baited with premium cat food, Clara explained her plan. "Once Gray is treated and neutered, I can release him back here. The cafe owner doesn't mind having a working cat to keep mice away." "Gray?" Samuel asked, adjusting the trapdoor mechanism. Clara shrugged, slightly embarrassed. "It's not very creative, but it fits him." They settled on a bench across the street to wait, and as dusk fell, Clara found herself sharing more about her life, her nursing studies, her dreams of eventually working in pediatric care, her struggles to help her grandmother with mounting medical bills. "She won't accept help from anyone," Clara sighed. "Too proud, we're managing, but one major expense could wipe us out completely." Samuel listened attentively, occasionally sharing glimpses of his own life, the pressure of living up to his father's legacy, his abandoned architectural designs, the emptiness of the social world he inhabited. "Sometimes I think about just walking away from it all," he admitted, "starting over somewhere where no one knows the Anderson name." "Why don't you?" Clara asked. Samuel stared into the distance. "My mother made me promise before she died that I'd look after my father. He's not as invincible as he seems." As night deepened around them, an unexpected comfort grew in their conversation, 2 people from vastly different worlds finding common ground in their shared humanity. Suddenly, Clara gripped his arm. "Look!" The grey tabby had cautiously approached the trap, sniffing at the entrance. "Come on, Grey," Clara whispered. "It's okay." After several tense minutes, the cat ventured into the trap, and the door closed behind it. The cat yowled in distress as Clara and Samuel rushed forward. "It's okay, it's okay," Clara soothed, carefully covering the trap with a blanket to calm the frightened animal. "We're going to help you." Samuel watched her gentle handling of the terrified cat with admiration. "Now what? Now we take him to the emergency vet. They're expecting us." As they drove to the clinic with the trap secured in the back seat, Samuel glanced at Clara. "You really care about this stray cat, don't you?" Clara nodded. "Every living thing deserves kindness, even if most people don't notice them." At the clinic, Dr. Rivera examined the sedated cat, confirming Clara's suspicions about the infected wound. "He'll need antibiotics and monitoring overnight. We'll also treat him for parasites and perform the neutering tomorrow. You can pick him up the day after." When the vet presented the estimated bill, Clara's face fell. It was more than she had expected, even with the program's discounted rates. "I've got this," Samuel said, immediately pulling out his credit card. "No," Clara protested. "I don't need your charity." "It's not charity," Samuel insisted. "It's an investment in Gray's future. Please, Clara, let me do this one thing." After a moment's hesitation, Clara nodded, too concerned about the cat to refuse help. Outside the clinic, Samuel checked his watch. "It's late. Can I drive you home?" "Actually, I need to stop by the pharmacy for my grandmother's medication first," Clara said. "It's out of your way." "I have nowhere else to be," Samuel replied simply. As they pulled away from the clinic, neither noticed the black SUV that had been parked across the street, or the man inside who had been watching them intently, speaking quietly into his phone. "Mr. Anderson, I've located your son. He's with the waitress from the party." Across town, Victor Anderson set down his phone, his expression darkening. His investigators had already provided a complete background on Clara Henderson, a nobody from Dorchester with no connections and no value to the Anderson empire. Whatever game his son was playing, it needed to end before it became a distraction from the major business deal Victor was negotiating, a deal that would require Samuel's full cooperation in the coming days. 3 days later, Clara sat cross-legged on the floor of her small apartment, watching with delight as Gray cautiously explored his new surroundings. The vet had declared him healthy enough for adoption rather than release, and Clara hadn't hesitated to bring him home. Now cleaned up and properly fed, Gray was revealed to be a handsome tabby with striking green eyes and a surprisingly affectionate nature once he felt secure. "See? I told you he'd love that cat bed," Samuel said from where he lounged on Clara's worn sofa, looking strangely at home despite the humble setting. In the short time since their night at the veterinary clinic, an unexpected friendship had blossomed between them. Samuel had insisted on driving Clara to pick up Gray, then helped her shop for cat supplies, spending far more than necessary on premium food, toys, and a plush bed that Gray was studiously ignoring in favor of a cardboard box. "You spoil him?" Clara laughed, watching Gray pounce on a feather toy. "He deserves it after living on the streets," Samuel replied. He checked his phone and grimaced. 3 missed calls from my father. I should probably head back." Clara nodded, trying to ignore the disappointment she felt. These past few days with Samuel had revealed a person far different from the tabloid caricature, thoughtful, funny, and surprisingly down-to-earth once away from his father's influence. "Will you be in trouble?" she asked. Samuel shrugged. "Nothing new there. We're hosting some Japanese investors tomorrow, another opportunity for me to smile and nod while my father makes decisions about my life." Before Clara could respond, her phone rang. It was Zoe. "Clara, thank God you answered. Listen, don't freak out, but your grandmother's in the hospital. She collapsed at home." Clara's world tilted sharply. "What? Which hospital?" "Boston Memorial." "I'm here now. Your neighbor called me when the ambulance came." "I'm on my way," Clara said, already grabbing her jacket, heart hammering with fear. Samuel was on his feet immediately. "What's wrong?" "My grandmother's in the hospital," Clara explained, voice shaking. "I need to get to Boston Memorial." "I'll drive you," Samuel said, keys already in hand. The ride to the hospital passed in a blur of anxiety. Samuel navigated through traffic with focused determination, while Clara made frantic calls, trying to get information from nurses who could tell her nothing until she arrived. In the hospital parking lot, Clara was out of the car almost before it stopped moving. Samuel caught up to her at the entrance. "Do you want me to come in with you?" he asked. Clara hesitated. Her instinct was to handle this alone, as she'd handled every crisis since childhood. But the genuine concern in Samuel's eyes weakened her resolve. "Yes," she admitted. "Please." Inside, they found Zoe pacing the waiting room. "They're running tests," she explained, hugging Clara tightly. "The doctor will update us soon." For 2 agonizing hours, they waited. Samuel quietly handled everything, bringing coffee, asking questions at the nurse's station, even calling his family's attorney when an insurance issue arose with Elaine's admission. Finally, a doctor approached. "Ms. Henderson, your grandmother has suffered a minor heart attack. We've stabilized her, but she'll need surgery, a coronary bypass." Clara swayed slightly, and Samuel's hand found hers, steadying her. "When?" she managed to ask. "As soon as possible," the doctor replied. "But there are some insurance complications. Her policy doesn't fully cover this procedure and—" "Cost isn't an issue," Samuel interrupted. "Please schedule the surgery immediately." The doctor looked between them, confused. Clara pulled her hand from Samuel's. "We need to discuss this," she said firmly. "Can I see my grandmother now?" When the doctor led her to Elaine's room, Clara was shocked by how small and fragile her grandmother looked against the white hospital sheets, connected to monitors and IVs. "There's my girl," Elaine said weakly. "Don't look so worried. I'm tougher than I look." Clara fought back tears. "The doctor says you need surgery." Elaine sighed. "I've known about my heart condition for months, dear. I didn't want to worry you with your studies and everything." "Months?" Clara repeated, stunned. "Why didn't you tell me?" "What could you have done? Work even more shifts? Drop out of nursing school?" Elaine reached for Clara's hand. "I've lived a good life, Clara." "Don't talk like that," Clara said fiercely. "You're getting the surgery." "Insurance won't cover most of it," Elaine reminded her gently. "We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars." Clara took a deep breath. "Let me worry about that." When she returned to the waiting room, Samuel was on his phone, speaking quietly but intensely. He ended the call when he saw her. "How is she?" he asked. "Stubborn as ever," Clara said, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Samuel, I appreciate what you said in there, but I can't accept your money for this." Samuel frowned. "Why not? I have more than I could ever need." "Because this isn't about a stray cat or a coffee date," Clara explained. "This is my grandmother's life, my responsibility. I won't be indebted to you that way." "It's not about debt," Samuel argued. "It's about helping someone you care about." "And what happens when whatever this is between us, ends?" Clara asked. "When you go back to your world and I'm left with a debt I can never repay." Samuel looked hurt. "Is that what you think of me? That I'd hold this over you?" "I don't know what to think," Clara admitted. "I barely know you, Samuel." A tense silence fell between them. Finally, Samuel nodded. "I respect your decision. But will you at least let me help you explore other options? My father's company has excellent health insurance for employees." "I'm not qualified for any positions at Anderson Enterprises," Clara pointed out. "Let me worry about that," Samuel said, a plan already forming in his mind. The next morning, against Clara's protests, Samuel arrived at the hospital with his father's assistant, Diana Cho. "Ms. Henderson," Diana said professionally, I understand you're studying nursing. Our company is establishing a health services division and needs administrative support from someone with medical knowledge. It's entry-level, but includes full health benefits for you and immediate family, effective immediately. Clara looked suspiciously between Diana and Samuel. This isn't real. The position is very real, Diana insisted, though I admit the timeline has been accelerated. If you're interested, we can complete the paperwork today. After Diana stepped out to take a call, Clara confronted Samuel. You did this, didn't you? The company really is expanding into healthcare, Samuel said. Diana just moved some things around to make it happen faster. And your father approved this. Samuel hesitated. He will once I explain. Clara studied him carefully. Why are you doing all this? The truth, Samuel. Samuel ran a hand through his hair, struggling to articulate feelings. He was just beginning to understand himself. Because when I'm with you, I remember who I wanted to be before I let my father shape me into someone I don't recognize anymore. Because you see me, not the Anderson name or the money or the reputation, just me. His raw honesty caught Clara off guard. Before she could respond, Diana returned with the paperwork, and practical concerns took precedence over emotional revelations. By that afternoon, Clara was officially an employee of Anderson Enterprises, and Elaine's surgery was scheduled for the following morning. As Clara prepared to spend the night at the hospital, Samuel reluctantly left for the investors' dinner he couldn't miss. I'll come back first thing tomorrow, he promised. What neither of them knew was that Victor Anderson had been fully informed about his son's activities. The private investigator's report on his desk included photographs of Samuel and Clara at the veterinary clinic, at her apartment, and at the hospital. Victor's fury had only intensified when Diana reported the unauthorized job offer. As Samuel entered the family mansion that evening, Victor was waiting in the foyer. So, he said coldly, you missed yesterday's preparation meeting because you were playing hero to a waitress and her stray cat. Samuel stiffened. You had me followed. I protect my interests, Victor replied. And you, despite your best efforts to prove otherwise, are my most valuable asset in the negotiations with the Nakamura Group. I'll be there for the dinner, Samuel assured him, turning toward the stairs. This ends now, Samuel, Victor said, his voice cutting like steel. Whatever game you're playing with this girl. Samuel turned back slowly. It's not a game, Dad. Victor laughed dismissively. Please, I've seen the file on Clara Henderson. A waitress from Dorchester with a sick grandmother and mountains of debt. She's clearly after your money. You don't know her, Samuel said, anger rising, and you certainly don't know me if you think that's what this is about. I know that you've been distracted, missing meetings, making unauthorized promises, Victor countered. The Nakamura deal could transform this company, and I need you focused. Her grandmother needs surgery, Samuel explained. I'm just helping with the insurance situation. Victor's expression hardened. By creating a fake job. Do you have any idea of the legal liability you've created? The precedent this sets? What happens when every employee wants to add their extended family to our insurance? Samuel hadn't considered these implications, and his hesitation gave Victor an opening. I'll make you a deal, Victor said, his tone softening slightly. Focus completely on the Nakamura negotiations for the next week. No distractions. If we secure this deal, I'll personally cover all medical expenses for the Henderson woman, and we'll find a legitimate position for Clara if she's qualified. Samuel studied his father warily. And if I refuse? Victor's expression turned cold again. Then I'll have Diana rescind the job offer immediately, citing procedural irregularities. Your friend's grandmother won't get her surgery, and you'll have made promises you can't keep. The calculated cruelty of the ultimatum shocked Samuel, revealing a side of his father he'd always suspected but never directly confronted. You would really use an old woman's life as leverage? He asked quietly. I'm simply prioritizing our family's interests, Victor replied. Something you should learn to do. Samuel felt trapped, knowing his father would follow through on his threat. Fine, he agreed reluctantly. 1 week. Victor smiled thinly. Excellent. Now go get ready for dinner. The Nakamuras arrive in an hour. As Samuel climbed the stairs to his room, a plan began forming in his mind. He would play his father's game, for now, but this manipulation had finally crystallized something Samuel had been avoiding for years. The man he had promised his mother he would look after was not the man she had believed him to be. In his room, Samuel made a quick call. Clara, I won't be able to come to the hospital tomorrow. He hesitated, hating the lie he was about to tell, but knowing it was necessary to protect her. Something urgent has come up with the business, but the insurance is all set and the surgery will proceed as planned. Clara's disappointed "I understand" tore at him, but Samuel forced himself to end the call quickly. Over the next week, he would have to distance himself completely while securing the Nakamura deal on his own terms. Only then could he ensure Clara and Elaine's security, and perhaps find a way to break free from his father's toxic control once and for all. A week passed, with no word from Samuel. Clara tried calling twice, but her calls went straight to voicemail, and her text messages remained unanswered. The abrupt disappearance hurt more than she wanted to admit, but she had little time to dwell on it. Elaine's surgery had been successful, but recovery was slow, requiring Clara to split her time between the hospital, her classes, and orientation at her new position in Anderson Enterprises' downtown office. The job itself was surprisingly legitimate, organizing medical records and coordinating with healthcare providers for the company's new wellness initiative. Clara's nursing knowledge proved genuinely useful, and her supervisor seemed impressed with her efficiency, unaware of the unusual circumstances of her hiring. On a rainy Friday afternoon, Clara was organizing files when Diana Cho appeared at her desk. "Miss Henderson, Mr. Anderson would like to see you in his office." Clara's heart leaped, thinking of Samuel, but Diana clarified. "Victor Anderson, 15th floor, end of the hall." Anxiety knotted Clara's stomach as she rode the elevator up. She had never directly interacted with Victor Anderson and couldn't imagine why he would summon her now. Had he discovered the circumstances of her employment? Was she about to be fired? Victor's corner office offered a panoramic view of Boston's skyline, the luxury a stark contrast to the utilitarian spaces on lower floors. He didn't rise when she entered, continuing to read documents on his desk. "Sir?" Clara said, standing awkwardly near the door. "You wanted to see me?" Victor finally looked up, studying her with cold assessment. "Clara Henderson, please sit down." Clara perched on the edge of a leather chair, feeling distinctly out of place. "I understand my son arranged your employment here," Victor said without preamble. "Yes, sir," Clara admitted, seeing no point in denial. "And how is your grandmother recovering?" The question surprised her. "She's doing well, thank you. The doctors are pleased with her progress." Victor nodded, then leaned forward. "Let me be direct, Ms. Henderson. I know about your friendship with my son. I know about the stray cat, the hospital visits, all of it." Clara's cheeks flushed, but she met his gaze steadily. "I'm not sure that's any of your business, sir." A flicker of surprise crossed Victor's face at her boldness. "Samuel is my business. His focus, his future, these are my concerns." "With all due respect," Clara said carefully, "Samuel is 30 years old. Isn't his future his own concern?" Victor's laugh held no humor. "You misunderstand the Anderson legacy, Ms. Henderson. Samuel was born into responsibility, not freedom. His choices affect thousands of employees, millions in charitable foundations, entire communities shaped by our developments." He stood, moving to the window. "This week, Samuel has been in Tokyo negotiating a partnership that will transform urban housing across 3 continents. That's his world, Miss Henderson. Not stray cats in alleyways. The revelation that Samuel was in Tokyo, not simply ignoring her, left Clara momentarily speechless. "I didn't know," she said finally. "No, you wouldn't," Victor agreed. "Just as he doesn't understand your world of community college and Dorchester apartments." Clara stood, anger rising. "You don't know anything about my world, Mr. Anderson, or about me." "I know more than you think," Victor countered, returning to his desk and opening a folder. Clara Marie Henderson, born July 12, 1999, parents deceased in auto accident 2011, raised by grandmother Elaine Henderson, former public school teacher, working your way through nursing school with a 3.8 GPA despite financial hardship. He closed the folder. Admirable, certainly, but hardly compatible with the responsibilities Samuel faces. Clara felt violated by this clinical dissection of her life. "Why are you telling me this?" Victor sighed, his expression softening slightly. "Because I'm offering you a choice, Ms. Henderson. Continue your employment here with a significant promotion and salary increase, or leave with a generous severance package. Either way, your grandmother's medical expenses will be fully covered." Clara's eyes narrowed. "In exchange for what?" "Distance from my son," Victor said bluntly. "Samuel returns from Tokyo tonight. The deal is signed, and his focus must remain on implementation. You're asking me to just disappear from his life?" Clara's voice wavered despite her effort to remain composed. "I'm offering you security for yourself and your grandmother," Victor corrected, "and saving you both from inevitable disappointment. These cross-class infatuations never end well, Miss Henderson. Reality eventually intrudes." Clara stood straighter, finding strength in her indignation. "You really believe money is all that matters, don't you? That people can be bought and manipulated, like assets in your portfolio?" For a moment, something like respect flickered in Victor's eyes. "What matters is legacy, Miss Henderson. Something built over generations. Samuel has obligations he cannot escape, no matter how much he might temporarily convince himself otherwise." "That should be his choice," Clara insisted. "And what would you have him choose?" Victor challenged. "To turn his back on everything he was raised to become? For what? A waitress with a nursing degree and a rescued cat?" The cruel accuracy of his words stung deeply. Clara had harbored no illusions about her place in Samuel's world, but hearing it articulated so boldly forced her to confront uncomfortable truths. "I need to get back to work," she said quietly, turning toward the door. "Consider my offer," Victor called after her. "You have until Monday to decide." Clara managed to maintain her composure until she reached the sanctuary of a bathroom stall, where tears finally broke free. Victor's words had forced her to confront the reality she'd been avoiding. Whatever connection she'd felt with Samuel, whatever genuine moments they'd shared, belonged to a temporary intersection of their vastly different paths. Perhaps it was better to end things now, before deeper attachments made separation more painful. That evening, Clara sat beside Elaine's hospital bed, absently stroking Gray, whom she'd smuggled inside her large purse to cheer her grandmother. The cat had become surprisingly social, curled contentedly on Elaine's lap, while Clara recounted her unsettling meeting with Victor Anderson. "He sounds like a man who's forgotten what really matters," Elaine observed, scratching Gray behind the ears. "Money and power have a way of doing that." "But he's not entirely wrong," Clara sighed. "Samuel and I do live in different worlds." Elaine studied her granddaughter carefully. "You care for him, don't you? Beyond friendship." Clara hesitated, then nodded. "It doesn't matter now. He's been in Tokyo all week, not even a text to explain." "People have reasons for what they do," Elaine said wisely. "Sometimes good ones." A soft knock interrupted their conversation. Clara turned to find Samuel standing in the doorway, looking exhausted in a rumpled suit, his tie loosened and dark circles under his eyes. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, uncertainty in his voice. "The nurses said I might find you here." Clara stared at him, conflicting emotions rendering her momentarily speechless. Elaine broke the silence. "Samuel, come in, dear. Clara was just telling me about your father." Samuel winced. "I just heard about his meeting with you. Clara, I'm so sorry." "I never intended—" "Tokyo," Clara interrupted. "You were in Tokyo all week and couldn't send a single text." "My father confiscated my phone," Samuel explained, stepping into the room. "Part of his conditions for ensuring your grandmother's surgery proceeded as planned." Clara's anger deflated slightly. "What conditions?" Samuel ran a hand through his hair. "Complete focus on the Nakamura negotiations. No contact with you until the deal was signed." He moved closer, his expression earnest. "I would have told you if I could." "I think I'll take a little walk," Elaine announced, carefully transferring Gray to Clara's arms. "These hospital rooms get stuffy after a while." "Grandma, you shouldn't," Clara began, but Elaine was already reaching for her robe. "Samuel, be a dear and help me to the lounge, would you?" she requested. "Clara, Gray needs some water. We'll be back shortly." Audi, with practiced grandmother authority that brooked no argument, Elaine effectively cleared the room, leaving Clara alone with Gray purring in her arms. When Samuel returned 10 minutes later, he found Clara by the window, watching raindrops trace patterns down the glass. "Your grandmother is formidable," he said, smiling slightly. "She's giving investment advice to a cardiac surgeon in the lounge." Despite herself, Clara smiled. "That sounds like her." A heavy silence fell between them, filled with unspoken emotions and the weight of Victor's ultimatum. "My father offered you money to stay away from me, didn't he?" Samuel finally asked. Clara nodded. "He's very concerned about distractions from your legacy." Samuel moved to stand beside her at the window. "What if I don't want that legacy anymore? What if I want something else entirely?" Clara looked at him skeptically. "Samuel, your father is right about one thing. We do come from different worlds. This past week, you've been negotiating million-dollar deals in Tokyo, while I've been learning how to file insurance claims and sneaking a cat into a hospital. And which of those activities do you think made a real difference in someone's life?" Samuel challenged. "The deal I signed or the comfort that cat is bringing to your grandmother right now?" Clara studied him, seeing the fatigue in his face, but also a clarity that hadn't been there before. "What are you saying?" Samuel took a deep breath. "I'm saying I made some decisions in Tokyo. The Nakamura deal includes a major affordable housing component that my father wasn't expecting. Sustainable, community-focused developments designed to revitalize struggling neighborhoods, not gentrify them." "Your father must have loved that," Clara said sarcastically. Samuel laughed. "He nearly had a stroke, but the Nakamuras loved it, and the press is already calling it innovative corporate responsibility. He can't back out now without massive reputational damage." "So you outmaneuvered him," Clara realized. "For the first time in my life," Samuel acknowledged, "and it felt right. Using the Anderson resources for something meaningful." He reached for her hand tentatively. "Clara, I don't expect you to believe me after I disappeared for a week, but meeting you changed something in me. Watching you care for a stray cat, for your grandmother, for your patients someday. It reminded me of who I wanted to be before I surrendered to my father's expectations." Clara hesitated, acutely aware of the vast differences that still separated them. "Samuel, even if you mean all this now, your world will pull you back eventually. It always does." "Then we create a new world," Samuel said simply. "One where an architecture graduate designs affordable housing that actually improves communities. Where a nursing student helps shape healthcare initiatives that reach people who really need them. Where neither of us has to pretend to be something we're not." Gray chose that moment to leap from Clara's arms to Samuel's shoulder, surprising them both. The cat settled contentedly, purring loudly, one paw resting against Samuel's cheek. "See," Samuel laughed. "Gray approves." Clara couldn't help smiling. "He's usually a better judge of character than I am." "Clara," Samuel said, suddenly serious despite the cat now grooming his ear, "I'm not asking for promises or commitments. I'm just asking for a chance to prove that what's between us matters more than the worlds we come from." Before Clara could respond, Elaine appeared in the doorway, leaning on her walker. "Well, isn't that a picture?" she chuckled, seeing Gray perched on Samuel's shoulder. "You know, Clara, when I was young, my mother told me that how a man treats animals tells you everything about his character." Clara exchanged a look with Samuel, both remembering their first real connection over a stray cat in an alleyway. "We were just discussing worlds," Clara told her grandmother. "Different ones, new ones." Elaine nodded wisely. "In my experience, the best worlds are the ones we build together one day at a time." She settled back into her bed with a contented sigh. "Now, Samuel, tell me more about these affordable housing designs of yours. My neighborhood could certainly use some revitalization that doesn't push out the long-time residents." As Samuel enthusiastically described his vision, Clara watched him. The animation in his face, the genuine passion in his voice, the gentle way he accommodated Gray's continued presence on his shoulder. She thought about Victor Anderson's offer, and the security it promised weighed against the uncertain path Samuel was proposing. The truth was, neither option offered guarantees. Life never did. But as she observed this man, who had tracked down a stray cat, secured healthcare for her grandmother, and challenged his father's empire for the chance to build something meaningful, Clara recognized what really mattered wasn't which world they came from, but the one they might create together. Later that night, after Samuel had gone and Elaine had fallen asleep, Clara composed a brief email to Victor Anderson. "Mr. Anderson, I've considered your offer and must decline. I believe in earning my position through merit, not manipulation. I'll continue my work at Anderson Enterprises as long as my performance warrants it, but my personal relationships remain my own choice. Respectfully, Clara Henderson." As she pressed send, Gray jumped onto the windowsill beside her, green eyes gleaming in the dim light. Clara stroked his soft fur, remembering the frightened stray he had once been. "We took a chance on each other, didn't we?" she murmured. "And look how that turned out." Outside, rain continued to fall on Boston, washing the city clean for whatever tomorrow might bring. Clara didn't know if her connection with Samuel would last beyond these extraordinary circumstances, or if the worlds they came from would ultimately prove too different to bridge. But for the first time in her life, she was willing to embrace uncertainty, to believe that sometimes the most unexpected encounters, even feeding a stray cat in secret, could lead to possibilities neither of them could have imagined alone.